NBA Twitter might be the worst yet most entertaining place to find basketball opinions. I refuse to debate people anymore on Twitter about their basketball opinions, but I'm going to start pointing out a few of these tweets that I see and then comment on them on here. So this first tweet, I feel like I just stepped into the mind of an asshole in this tweet. Okay, so this came off a response of the video that went viral about Con Knipple and Klay Thompson and comparing the two. Now, I'm not even going to get into Con and Klay because there's nothing to compare right now. They both are shooters. That's about it. Con has done anything close to what Klay is to show that he's on that level. He might in time, but right now, no. But anyway, he said, bruh, Klay was great, but let's be real. He was wide ass open playing next to Steph. You see the issue with NBA Twitter is comments like these. Because you know they didn't watch basketball or watch the game to even come up with that statement. Because there's no coach in the NBA that's going to be like, you know what? Let's just leave Klay wide open for shots. Klay is one of the greatest tough shot hand in the face makers ever. And you got people like this saying, oh, he was just wide ass open because he was playing next to Steph. This is why I don't engage anymore. Let's go on to the next one. This next one, okay? This guy says, y'all ever think about how truly absurd it is that 2018 Bron got that Cavs team to the finals? Spare me the East is weak talk. There's no one in NBA history who would have pulled off that feat. One thing I noticed about a younger generation of basketball fans is a lot of them really don't know their history of the game. So, yes, a lot of them grew up on LeBron. So the greatness that you saw was LeBron James and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. But to say that nobody can bring a team like that, which had one other All-Star, you had shooters, you had former Sixth Man of the Year, J.R. Smith, the team wasn't as bad as trying to make it seem. Because when you look at the team that they played against in the playoffs in 2018, you have a Pacers team, I bet you y'all couldn't tell me the starting five of that team right now without going to look it up. Then you had the Raptors with Kyle Lowry and DeRozan. And then you had a rookie Jason Tatum, second year Jaylen Brown, and a hurt Kyrie in Boston. I don't see any team that was just better or overly matched for Cleveland, especially with LeBron. So that answers that question because I think there's multiple great players I think could have gotten past that group to get to the finals. Also, we've seen guys bring trash teams or people that consider them trash teams to the finals. Look at 01 Sixers with Allen Iverson. Look at Jason Kidd's Nets. Even look at the LeBron team from 07, which I think this team in 2018 is better than that 07 team. So looking at that and then saying like, oh, nobody can do it but LeBron. You got to know your history, dog. Now, here's the other one. This is from Brandon Jennings. I like Brandon Jennings. I've always been a fan of Brandon Jennings. I liked his game since like high school. I was always pissed that he got hurt. But he said T-Mac and Vince Carter are not even better than DeMar and PG. I can't roll with that. Now, one thing that I can say is it could be a little hometown bias in that because they're from the LA area, DeRozan and Paul George. So I can understand that. But when you're talking about them as players, and you're just talking about, because neither one of them, I could say, given their talent with all of them, they all, you could say, underachieved. But one thing I can say is Vince Carter and Tracy McGrady were in conversations that DeRozan and Paul George were never in. Vince and T-Mac were also in situations where I don't think DeRozan or Paul George would have thrived in. So I remember seeing that Orlando team with T-Mac play multiple times. And I remember, as a kid, I'm looking at the team like, yo, T-Mac has to shoot a lot just to keep this team in it. Because, I mean, it's like Andrew DeClerc, Bo Outlaw, Darrell Armstrong. Like, this is the supporting cast he had. So he had to shoot a lot just to keep his team in games. And I don't think Paul George or DeRozan would have been able to lift that team to make them a playoff team. And then I look at Vince Carter in Toronto. In some seasons, it was very similar. And I used to see that up close when they were like, I used to be able to go to the training camp with them because, Toronto's close to Buffalo. Toronto's training camp used to be in Buffalo. And I used to be able to get in because my dad, one of their consultants for the Raptors was a man named Coach John McClendon. He's in National Basketball Hall of Fame. That's a history lesson if you guys want to look him up, Coach John McClendon. And then Mark Jackson. So my dad knew both of them. Mark Jackson, he used to coach. He was one of Mark Jackson's first coaches. And then Coach McClendon became more like a mentor to him. So anytime they were there, like, hey, just come in. So sometimes he would bring me and my teammates, or sometimes just bring me, and I'm watching. I'm looking like, yo, this team isn't great. So watching Vince and T-Mac uplift those teams, I don't think we've seen DeRozan or Paul George do that in those situations. But then you look on outside of it, the impact. T-Mac and Vince impact is way bigger than Paul George and DeRozan's. Now, when you look at Canada basketball, the level that it's on now never gets there without Vince Carter. And I know that because I was closer there. Canada is a hockey country. And Vince Carter changed that and made basketball paramount. So when you look at the Canadian basketball players in the NBA right now, the Sheas, the Jamal Murrays, those type of guys, you're not getting that without Vince Carter and his impact. And you look at Tracy McGrady. Tracy McGrady was the original Paul George. Talk about your favorite player's favorite player. Like, he was in conversations that Paul George and DeRozan, like, when they were, like, it was a time. People don't want to admit it, but there was a time, because I was there, where Kobe and T-Mac was a debate. You would have never had Paul George or DeRozan in a debate with a Kevin Durant or a LeBron. So that just shows how good Tracy McGrady was and Vince Carter. And then you just look at their impact on the game. T-Mac was a lot of people's favorite player, just like Paul George. And then the global aspect of it. T-Mac goes overseas. Look at Gilbert Arenas. Look at those clips. He said, man, I went over there with T-Mac, and it's just like. And then, that era. Even with Kobe and all that, like, T-Mac's in those conversations. Vince is in those conversations. Like, their impact is much bigger. So when you're just looking at them as players, I think they're better players. But then when you add the impact and everything they did outside of it, it's not even close.